Welcome to Blake's Pai Sho Academy. Today I will be teaching you how to play the chaotic game of Fire Pai Sho. Fire Pai Sho is a variant of Pai Sho that is centered around taking risks and positioning. As usual, let's go over the board first. The board can be orientated any way you like, but by default on scudpaisho.com the board will be orientated like this, and there will be an option to orientate it like this if this makes more sense to you. It may make more sense if you are more used to Scud Pai Sho, and also if you are used to Scud Pai Sho, then a lot of mechanics in this game transfer over between the two games, and you should be pretty familiar with some of the mechanics in Fire Pai Sho. So yes, on scudpaisho.com, the board by default will be orientated like this, with the small red triangles to the sides and the large red triangles being above and below each other. Fire Pai Sho is played on the intersections of the lines. The points completely within the small red triangles are called gates, and they are not used for play in Fire Pai Sho. They act as an impossible wall. The rest of the board is split up into different gardens. The white triangles are the white gardens, the large red triangles are the red gardens, and the brown areas are the neutral gardens. Lastly are the midlines, which are the lines that separate a red and white garden and cross the middle from gate to gate. Now let's talk about the setup. Each player starts with two different sets of tiles. The first is the player's library, which consists of the tiles you see here, one of each basic flower tile and special flower tile. The other set is the player's reserve, and it consists of these tiles, which is one of each basic flower tile and one of each accent tile. The objective of Fire Pai Sho is to form a harmony ring, which is a chain of harmonies which go around the center of the board as shown here. The game begins with the guest placing a tile from their library onto a space on a midline. After that, host will take the first turn. Let's talk about what a turn consists of. On your turn, you may either move one of your flower tiles on the board, or plant, or otherwise called placing, a tile onto the board from your library. When planting flowers, it may be placed in any neutral garden. This includes these spaces. If a player on their turn forms a new harmony between any of their tiles when moving or planting, then they get a harmony bonus, and must immediately place a random tile from their reserve. Only one harmony bonus can occur per turn. Now let's talk about the tiles, starting with the basic flower tiles. There are 6 different basic flower tiles, and you start with one of each in your library and reserve. Each basic flower tile has a number and color assigned to it. The color is either white or red. Red flowers cannot enter white gardens, and white flowers cannot enter red gardens. The numbers can either be 3, 4, or 5. And that is how many spaces the flower can move up to when moving. Now let's talk about harmonies, the most important mechanic for Fire Pai Sho. A harmony is created when 2 of a player's harmonious flowers are on the same line with no tiles or gate between them. Now, which flowers are harmonious with each other? Well, this chart shows that. Flowers connected by the green lines are able to form harmonies with each other. The opposite of harmonious flowers are clashing flowers, which are the flowers across from each other on this chart, connected by the straight red lines. Clashing flowers are never allowed to be on the same line without any tiles between them. Now let's talk about the accent tiles. There are 4 different accent tiles, and you start with one of each in your reserve. First is the rock tile. When using the rock tile, you can place it on any open intersection on the board that is not a gate. When on the board, if 2 flower tiles belonging to the same player, but not necessarily the player who placed the rock tile, are on the same line, and the rock is also on that line, then those 2 flowers can harmonize with each other, even if they typically cannot. This does not work for flowers that are clashing, and there still needs to be no other tiles in between the flowers for a harmony to form. The next accent tile is the wheel tile. When using the wheel tile, you may place it on any open intersection that does not cause an illegal position. This is important to know because when you place the wheel tile, it rotates all surrounding tiles 1 space clockwise around the wheel tile. And this means you need to check if the space you want to place the wheel would create an illegal position, like moving clashing flowers onto the same line without anything in between them, or moving a red flower into a white garden. This is a good time to mention that surrounding in Fire Pai Sho means any of these 8 spaces around a tile. Now, the Knotweed tile. The knotweed can be placed on any open intersection, and when on the board, all surrounding tiles to the knotweed tile are able to form harmonies with flower tiles belonging to the same player of the flower tiles surrounding the knotweed, even if they are not able to usually. It is the same way it works for the rock. It does not work for clashing flowers, and all the other usual conditions for the harmony to form must be fulfilled. The last accent tile is the boat tile. When using the boat tile, it can be placed on any flower tile or any accent tile. When played on an accent tile, that accent tile is removed from the board and the game, along with the boat tile that was used to remove it. If the boat tile is instead used on a flower tile, then the boat tile is placed onto the space the flower tile was on, and then that flower tile is moved to one of the surrounding spaces of the boat tile, as shown here. Those are all the accent tiles, and the only tiles that remain now are the special flower tiles. There are two, and they begin in players' libraries. First is the white lotus tile. The white lotus tile can move up to 2 spaces, and it can move into all gardens. It also forms harmonies with all flowers except the other white lotus tile. This means that the white lotus can harmonize with flowers belonging to the other player. In a case like this, the harmony belongs to the player that owns the flower tile that is not the white lotus. The only other special flower tile in Fire Pai Sho is the orchid tile. The orchid tile can move up to 6 spaces and can move into all gardens. The orchid does not naturally form harmonies with any flowers besides the lotus, but it can take advantage of the bonuses that are offered by the knotweed and rock tiles. And that's almost everything you need to know to play Fire Pai Sho. The only thing left to discuss is ending the game. I've already mentioned the main objective, which is to form a ring of connected harmonies around the center point, and when a player does that, the game ends, and that player who owns the ring wins. If 2 rings are formed, one belonging to each player, then the game is a draw. The other way for a game of Fire Pai Sho to end is when a player places the last tile from the reserve. When this happens, the player that owns the most amount of harmonies that cross a midline wins the game. Now, it's important to note for this count of midline crossing harmonies, harmonies that cross the center point of the board do not count towards the total. And that is everything you need to know to play Fire Pai Sho. I will now be doing a quick example game to show off the mechanics, but feel free to stop watching here if you feel confident that you understand all the rules. Alright guys, here's the example game for how to play Fire Pai Sho. Like I said in the rules, the guest has to make the first action, which is choosing one of their tiles from their library and placing it on any part of the midlines. So for this case, they'll be choosing a white 4 and they're going to put it right here. Now the game formally starts and players will take turns as they do throughout the rest of the game. This first action is not really a turn in the typical sense in Fire Pai Sho because it doesn't follow the rules of all following turns. So as I will show here, host, for their first turn, they don't have any flower tiles on the board, so they can't choose to move any flower tiles. Their only option is to place a flower tile. So they can select a flower tile like this, and you'll see all the spaces where they can play it. Also, I just realized, let me switch to the default board and designs really quick. I apologize for not having those right away, but this will hopefully be a little bit clearer for those who are not familiar with the board that I usually use. So you can see here, this is what the board looks like. It doesn't really change anything for that first move for guest, but you can see these are the red gardens and these are the white gardens. You know, pretty simple. So hosts for their first turn will be choosing to plant a flower because they cannot move any flowers, as I explained already. So they're just going to put a red 5 here. Now it is guest's turn, and they have the option to move this flower. As you can see, it can move up to 4 spaces because it is a white 4, and it can move into the white garden, but it cannot move into the red garden. But instead of moving a flower, for their turn, guest is going to be planting a flower. They're going to select this white 3 here, and as I showed on the chart earlier, it can harmonize with the white 4. So if I put it here, then they form a harmony. And since guest has now formed a harmony on their turn, they get a harmony bonus. And on scudpaisho.com, it will just randomly select one of the tiles from the reserve, and you must now use that tile. And in this case, guest pulled a red 3 from the reserve. And you can see here how clashing works. It can't go on any of these spaces because it clashes with the white 3, but other than that, it can go on any of the neutral garden spaces. So we're just going to put it right here. Now, for host's turn, they're also going to be forming a harmony. We're going to plant a red 4 over here, and they pull a wheel. So you can see the wheel can go on pretty much any space on the board. There's only a few spaces it can't go, as you can see. So first of all, there's the gates, which are not really spaces in Fire Pai Sho. They are never used for anything, and they block harmonies. But you'll notice the wheel can also not go on any of these spaces, which, let me explain why that is really quick. So first of all, with this case over here, the wheel cannot go here, 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 or here, because all of these moves would move this red 4 into the white garden in some way, which is not legal in Fire Pai Sho, like I explained. So that's why you are not able to place the wheel tile over here. Now, you're also not able to place it here for the same reason, because it would move into this red garden. Same for this spot. But these spaces right here are a little less clear. You're not able to place the wheel tile here because if you did, it would either move the white 4 here to this space or here to this space. And that would leave these tiles on the same line without any tiles in between them, and that is illegal because they are clashing flowers. So other than that, you can place the wheel tile anywhere, and as you can see here, it will move a flower one space clockwise, and it moved this red 5 into this red garden here. So now for guest's turn, you'll see they also do not have the option of moving this white 4 anywhere else now like they did earlier, because as I said when explaining how the wheel works, it will make these flowers who are clashing be on the same line without any tiles in between them, which as we know is illegal. So this white 4 can actually only move to these two spaces. So guest will not be doing that. Guest is instead going to move this red 3 right here. Now for host's turn, they could move a flower or plant a flower. They're going to be planting a lotus right here. As I explained, the lotus forms harmonies with all flowers. So they formed a harmony with their red 4, and since they own the red 4, they get the harmony and they get the harmony bonus. And they get another red 4 to place from the reserve. They're going to place it here, which you can see forms harmony with this lotus and this red 5. Now it is guest's turn, and they are going to move right here. And you can see they formed a harmony with this lotus. And since this flower that is not the lotus belongs to the guest, this harmony actually belongs to the guest, not to the host who owns the lotus. So because of this, since it is the guest harmony, they get a harmony bonus, and in this case they pull a red 5, which they're going to place right here. So now in this position, host has a win, which I will not be doing because there is more I want to show off in this game. But if they move the red 5 right here, then they'd pull a tile, but as you can see, they will win the game because they have a harmony ring. This is what a harmony ring will look like. I probably showed it earlier in the video, but just in case I didn't. So in this case, host will not be doing that because there is more I want to showcase in the video. So let's plant a orchid right here. So the orchid does not naturally form harmonies with any flowers, but it does form a harmony with the lotus. And also this shows, in case you were wondering and it wasn't so clear, flowers can be directly adjacent to each other, next to each other like this, and still form a harmony. There doesn't need to be space in between them. So the orchid is forming a harmony with the lotus here, and because of that, host owns the orchid, the tile that is not the lotus, and therefore they get the bonus. And in this case, they pull a white 4. And they're going to put the white 4 right here. Now for guest's turn, they are going to place a red 5 over here, and they get a wheel, which I've already explained how it works earlier. There's nothing more to really mention here, but I can just show really quickly. It does block harmonies, as all tiles do in the base game of Fire Pai Sho. Now for guest's turn, they're going to move their orchid right here, which does form a harmony with this lotus, but they already were forming a harmony with this lotus at the beginning of their turn, so it is not a new harmony. And because of that, they don't get any harmony bonus and do not pull a tile from the reserve. So now it is guest's turn, and they're just going to form a harmony with this red 5 over here, and they pull a knotweed. So great, I wanted to showcase this. Tiles that are on a surrounding space of a knotweed are boosted and form harmonies with all flowers belonging to the same player. So for this case, we're just going to put it here. So you can see there's a little visual indication on this board that these two flowers are boosted and enhanced by the knotweed. And you'll see actually now that this red 5 is on a surrounding space of this knotweed, it is able to form a harmony with this red 3 belonging to the same player. Usually, as you saw earlier, they did not form a harmony, they could not. But now that the knotweed is here, it does allow them to form a harmony when they usually would not be able to. Now it is host's turn, and I just want to show really quickly, this does not mean that they are like the lotus. So you can see, even though this is enhanced, it's not going to form a harmony with an opponent's flower like this. So just something to clear up really quick. They're going to move over here. I just want to show that even though it is guest knotweed, it still boosts host tiles, so they can take advantage of it. And you can see here, they use it to harmonize a white 4 and a red 5, which usually do not harmonize with each other, but the white 4 is being boosted by this knotweed, so they are able to. Now, host gets a rose, which they are just going to place over here. Now it is guest's turn. They're going to be doing this. They pull a white 5, which will go here. And now it is host's turn, and I just wanted to show they can move this orchid. They move it here. and you'll see they get a harmony bonus, which at first may be a little confusing. They did not form any harmonies with this orchid, but they did make a new harmony. So the orchid was originally here, but they moved it here. That opened up this, which created a harmony between their red 4 and their lotus, which is a new harmony, and it belongs to host. So because of that, they get a harmony bonus. Even though the orchid itself is not forming any harmonies, they did form a new harmony on their turn. So they get a harmony bonus and get a red 5, which they will place over here. And I just wanted to show really quickly as well, like I said when explaining the rules, this white 5 is boosted. That does not mean that it can harmonize with clashing flowers. You'll see this red 5 and this white 5 are still clashing. Even though the white 5 is boosted, the red 5 cannot go onto the same lines as the white 5. Just something to showcase very quickly. So Guess is just going to be doing this, and they pull a red 4, which will go over here. Now it is host's turn. They're going to be forming a harmony, pull a white 5, and now it is Guest's turn. They are going to form a harmony, and they pull a rock. And you can see here, I'll showcase how the rock works. These flowers here are not forming harmonies, because like I said, the red 5 and the red 3 cannot normally form harmonies. But if you put the rock here, now they are. All tiles on this range are able to form harmonies with flowers that they're usually not able to. Again, this does not include clashing flowers. So let me just make host move really quick. They're going to do this. Just place a tile somewhere. Now you'll see this red 5 is still restricted in this movement because even though they are on this rock line, the white 3 and red 3 are still clashing and cannot be on the same line without a tile in between them. So instead, they are going to place a orchid right here. And you can see they formed a harmony because the orchid does take advantage of the accent tiles like the rock here. And because of that, it is able to form a harmony with this red 5 and this red 3. So because of that, they formed a new harmony, they get a harmony bonus, and now they pull a boat tile. And you can see you can place it on pretty much every tile that's on the board right now. Except there is one exception. You'll see you cannot place it on this knotweed here because once you place the boat on an accent tile like the knotweed, it removes the knotweed and there's going to be no tile here, which would mean these clashing flowers would be on the same line without anything in between them, which is illegal, as I've explained many times. So instead, Guess is going to be placing the boat on this rock here. And you can see it gets rid of the rock, the boat goes away as well, and now none of these tiles are being enhanced. This orchid is not going to be forming harmonies with these flowers. So now it is host's turn. They're going to place this right here. They get a rock, and they'll put it here just to show. Same thing with the knotweeds. Rock, even though it is a host rock, it's still going to be boosting Guest's flowers. It is host's turn. They're going to be doing this. Get a lily, and you can see this lotus is forming a harmony with host's flower. They still formed a harmony with their own flower, so they got the harmony bonus. Now it is host's turn, and they're going to be forming a harmony here. They get a boat, and this is basically the last thing I wanted to show. If you don't use a boat on a accent tile, because you do not have to, you can use it on a flower tile. Any flower tile, and they'll all have the same effect. You know, when using it on a flower tile, you can push it to one of the surrounding spaces, which usually would mean all of these 8 spaces. But you can see here there are some limitations because you cannot use the boat to push a flower into an illegal space. So this white 4 is not able to be pushed onto any of these spaces because it is on the same line of the red 4, and also it can't move onto any of these spaces because it is going to be in a red garden. So your only options are these 3 spaces here. So we're going to be pushing the white 4 right here, and that is going to be that. Now it is Guest's turn, so they're going to move a flower. They're going to move their white 4 up here, and this is going to end the game. This is the other way you can end the game other than a harmony ring. This white 3 in their reserve that they just pulled with their harmony bonus is their last flower in their reserve. So once they place it, the game is going to end, and the player with the most midline crossing harmonies is going to win. So they're going to place the white 3 right here, and you'll see the website will automatically count up the midline crossing harmonies for you. And you can see here in this case it says that host has 4 and Guest has 3, so in this case host won the game. Let me just quickly manually count the midline crossing harmonies so you can see for yourself how it counted them. First we'll do host. Host has one here, it crosses the midline on this point. They have one here, crosses the midline on this point. They have one here, which crosses the midline on this point, which is using the Guest lotus. And then their 4th one is here between these 2 flowers crossing the midline. Now, you'll see guest has 3. They have one here crossing the midline with this boosted red 5. They have one crossing the midline with this boosted Orchid and red 3. And then they have one here between their lotus and this white 3 crossing the midline here. Now, that is 3 midline crossing harmonies. Looking at this position on the board, you might be confused and think that there is 4 because of this one right here. It looks like it should count because it crosses a midline. But like I explained in the rules, the center point does not count for a midline when in this final endgame tally. So this midline, this harmony here is not counted at all. Because even though it might look like it crosses midline, it does not count for the sake of this final total. Instead of being a draw, host wins. If this counted and somehow guest had 4 midline crossing harmonies as well as host, then it would be a draw because they had the same amount. But in this case, host won the game. And yeah, I think I showed off pretty much everything I could here. So I hope this example game helps you if you had any confusion about Fire Pai Sho and how any of it played out. So I hope this helped you. I hope this whole video helps you learn Fire Pai Sho. And thank you all for watching. Bye bye.